and dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. To get started off with, I guess we can go ahead and just get into the Ebola situation here. And Dallas Ebola patient has died, and the hospitals confirmed that. What was his name? Trying to think right off the top of my head. Let me pull something up here. Eric Duncan, Thomas Eric Duncan, and he died this morning at 7:51 a.m. So we have that going on. There is also report out Frisco, Texas deputy in quarantine with Ebola-like symptoms. What does this all mean? What's really behind this outbreak? Well, AMTV Christopher Green has put out a clip here, the truth about the outbreak, and we'll see his opinion and his take on what's going on with this, and then I'll get into some of these reports about Mr. Duncan and the possible other outbreak in Texas with the deputy sheriff, or see, I keep losing it here, but I'll get into that after this clip.
Worry unless they have the infectious symptoms, you can see them, that you don't have to worry about catching it. Yet this guy picked up the disease apparently from somebody who did not have the infectious symptoms.
Again, don't hypothesize because we just don't know. So we have no idea what he did or didn't do and how he got it. I'm sure that's going to be vital information to try to understand the transmission. But the idea that there's going to be a widespread outbreak here, I think, is just, again, it's a bit of fear-mongering. We have a single case. This is not a big...
Yeah, but I'm just getting back to the president's statement, Doctor, and that is that the president said it would be unlikely if we had a case in this country. Unlikely to have even one case. Do I get back to see the tape again?
He said it wouldn't be an Ebola outbreak, and I think that's
and then the second part of his sentence, he said that in the unlikely case someone brings it here.
Yeah.
In the unlikely case somebody brings it here. Well, they've done it. We're living in the world of the unlikely already. That's all I'm saying. I'm not fear-mongering. I'm stating the facts, and I wonder if everybody else is.
You're right.
In today's video, we investigate the truth about the deadly Ebola virus and ask critical questions about the outbreak. The first case in America was confirmed just a few days ago at a Dallas, Texas hospital. And according to reports, a second person is already being monitored who came in close contact with the first. Another report indicated that an Ebola infection was possible in the state of Hawaii, another in Washington, D.C. And now, according to multiple sources, up to 100 more people are being monitored for Ebola in Dallas, where the original outbreak occurred. With an incubation period of roughly 2 to 21 days and an infection rate doubling every 15 to 20 in countries like Liberia, according to the CDC, it is anyone's guess how many more people will be infected by the time you watch this video. Before we get started, please support our sponsor, ProPureUSA.com. ProPure is the #1 gravity-fed water system on the market today, period. Don't waste your hard-earned money on bottled water. Save hundreds of dollars a month with the ProPure water filtration system and enjoy clean, crisp, refreshing water. Click the link below right now. The Centers for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, and the President of the United States all assure us that the deadly Ebola virus will be stopped, contained, and quarantined. But what if it's not? What if they're wrong? And what if the disease continues to spread? I'd like to emphasize that our intent isn't to scare you with this video, but to provide you with key information and ask critical questions of the outbreak. For example, how is the Ebola response currently being handled by our government and health agencies? Is the response adequate? Have authorities prepared for a worst-case scenario? And are safeguards properly in place? Can we be confident that if a worst-case scenario does occur, we are prepared for it? Please note that in a time of crisis, we can expect our government, public officials, and media to be less than transparent. It is why we, the alternative media, must ask critical questions and question the official narrative. We must investigate all possibilities and keep our minds open. Our very lives may depend on it. We sincerely hope that this horrific disease is contained and that our government is telling us the truth. But as was the basis for the founding of this great nation, we the people must question our leadership and have a healthy distrust of our government. After all, what is in the best interest of rulers and kings isn't always in the best interest of the people. For example, if President Barack Obama already knew that an aggressive outbreak was about to take place in America and that the virus was spreading rapidly, would he tell you about it? Or would it be in the best interest of our government and the political elite to keep their mouths shut? Wouldn't they want to prevent panic? 2 weeks ago, the president said this.
I thank Dr. Frieden and everybody here at the Center for Disease Control for welcoming me here today. Tom and his team just gave me an update on the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Our efforts to help mobilize the international community to fight it, and the steps that we're taking to keep people here at home safe. Tom and his team are doing outstanding work between the specialists they have on the ground in West Africa and here at headquarters. They've got hundreds of professionals who are working tirelessly on this issue. This is the largest international response in the history of the CDC. First and foremost, I want the American people to know that our experts here at the CDC and across our government agree that the chances of an Ebola outbreak here in the United States are extremely low. We've been taking the necessary precautions, including working with countries in West Africa to increase screening at airports so that someone with the virus doesn't get on a plane for the United States. In the unlikely event that someone with Ebola does reach our shores, we've taken new measures so that we're prepared here at home. We're working to help flight crews identify people who are sick, and more labs across our country now have the capacity to quickly test for the virus. We're working with hospitals to make sure that they are prepared and to ensure that our doctors, our nurses, and our medical staff are trained, are ready, and are able to deal with a possible case safely.
Interesting. Just a few weeks after the unlikely event, the CDC confirmed we now have our first infection.
Today, we are providing the information that an individual traveling from Liberia has been diagnosed with Ebola in the United States. This individual left Liberia on the 19th of September, arrived in the U.S. on the 20th of September, had no symptoms when departing Liberia or entering this country, but 4 or 5 days later, around the 24th of September, began to develop symptoms. On the 26th of September, initially sought care, and Sunday, the 28th of September, was admitted to a hospital in Texas and placed on isolation.
Hundreds of people are now being closely monitored by the CDC for the disease, and the potential scope of the outbreak is pushing beyond the state of Texas. Does this mean that the unlikely event the president was talking about is now likely? And what necessary precautions is he taking? AMTV reported last week that the president had authorized up to 3,000 U.S. troops to be deployed to Monrovia, Liberia, at the heart of the outbreak in West Africa. In addition to deployment of U.S. troops, by the way, with no experience handling or quarantining infectious disease, I guess they're just going to shoot at the virus, up to $500 million taxpayer dollars were allocated. Is it not obvious that this is a very aggressive action, an allocation of valuable resources? Does it suggest that the spread of Ebola is a much more serious threat than they are leading us to believe? Curiously, the president is also using this as an opportunity to install strategic military bases in the region, AFRICOM. At the same time, he is bombing Iraq and Syria illegally through executive action. But this we will save for another video. Judging by the seriousness of the president's actions, his military deployment, we can be rest assured that the president has already taken the logical step of stopping all incoming air traffic from Ebola-affected nations, like Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Nigeria, where the disease originated, right? Wrong. As of the production of this video, and pointed out months ago by AMTV, not only has the president not stopped incoming air travel from this part of the world, but this is exactly how the recent infection in Dallas was transported to America, by air. So why would the president overlook this? Is this not a necessary precaution we should be taking? Why would Homeland Security not provide security to the homeland to prevent the spread of a deadly infectious disease that could turn into a pandemic here in America and potentially kill millions? Either this proves malicious intent to infect Americans at home, or at the very least, it's gross negligence. Hopefully by the time this video airs, the president will have done the right thing and halted all incoming air traffic from the Ebola hot zone. If he doesn't, this is a serious red flag. So as production of this video, Ebola air travel is still wide open into America. Our border defenses useless, vulnerable to the spread of a virulent and deadly infectious disease. Thomas Eric Duncan, a Liberian national and the first known infected patient to have brought the disease to America, flew from Liberia to a connecting flight in Belgium and then all the way to Dulles International Airport before arriving in Dallas. He exposed himself to hundreds of people through recirculated air during these flights, not to mention airport terminals, bypassed U.S. Customs officials and Homeland Security. He later went to a local Dallas hospital to seek treatment, was overlooked by medical professionals on his first visit, and sent home with antibiotics, even though it was mentioned he had just traveled from an Ebola-infected country and wasn't isolated until his second visit at the urging of a close friend. So I have a question for you. How many more Thomas Duncans are there that we don't know about? And why has the president still not shut down incoming air traffic from Ebola-affected countries? Why is Obama recklessly playing with American lives? Is he trying to spread the disease? The Ebola response by the president, his necessary precautions, have not just been inadequate. They've been downright deplorable and arguably criminally negligent. Again, if the president doesn't shut down incoming air traffic soon, he's endangering millions of American lives. The American public should hold him accountable for this. Is there a motive for the president to voluntarily keep our borders open to Ebola? Who profits from an Ebola outbreak, and what is there to gain in the unlikely event of a pandemic? As I mentioned on Twitter, for those of you that want a hint to the why of the Ebola outbreak, watch Revolution Season 2, Episode 12 on Netflix. Although fiction, this particular episode provides clues to how a government may use the threat of an engineered viral outbreak in order to cull the general population. Culling in biology is known as the process of segregating organisms from a group according to a desired or undesired trait. It is the process of separating animals, or humans, based on specific criteria in order to reinforce or exaggerate desirable traits and specifically get rid of the undesirable. Isn't it interesting that the first Ebola outbreak to infect an American on American soil just happens to occur in the great Liberty state of Texas, a state grossly opposed to the Obama administration and his policies? Is it not also curious that the president currently planning executive action on illegal immigration, what some have called unilateral amnesty to terrorists, still has the border wide open to illegal aliens in the American Southwest? We hate to be so cynical, but it's almost as if the president is maliciously trying to wipe out undesirables, starting in the state of Texas. Could this be a form of Obama social engineering? A culling of the Patriot movement. Now, before you criticize my reference to a fictional TV series, please be reminded that Mark Twain was famous for observing that truth is stranger than fiction. Although a tremendous amount of information is readily available to the general public thanks to the internet, most are still blindly unaware that the eugenics movement, something often linked to Hitler, was already well established in the United States before it spread to Nazi Germany. California eugenicists, for example, began producing literature promoting eugenics and sterilization and sending it overseas to German scientists well before the outbreak of World War II. By 1933, California had subjected more people to forceful sterilization than all other U.S. states combined. The Rockefeller Foundation helped develop and fund various eugenics programs, including the one that Joseph Mengele worked in before he went to Auschwitz. Upon returning from Germany in 1934, where more than 5,000 people per month were being forcibly sterilized, the California eugenics leader, C.M. Goethe, bragged to a colleague, quote, "You will be interested to know that your work has played a powerful part in shaping the opinions of the group of intellectuals who are behind Hitler in this epoch-making program. Everywhere I sense that their opinions have been tremendously stimulated by American thought. I want you, my dear friend, to carry this thought with you for the rest of your life, that you have really jolted into action a great government of 60 million people." Is Ebola a modern-day culling of the African population? Are social elitists like the Rockefellers getting rid of what they deem undesirables in our society? Could Ebola be a man-made disease? That's what one man, an American professor at Delaware University, Dr. Cyril Broderick, a Liberian native, thinks. In his controversial September 9th article, Ebola AIDS Manufactured by Western Pharmaceuticals, U.S. DoD, Broderick accuses the U.S. government of engineering the Ebola virus and bringing the disease to Africa to infect the indigenous populations. What many have written off as conspiracy theory was credible enough for a major Liberian newspaper, the largest in fact, to publish it on the front page. The story, published by the Liberian Daily Observer, specifically implicates the U.S. government, Department of Defense, American research universities, in participating in an American military medical industry Cold War scheme to test bioweapons in African nations. Broderick suggests that the U.S. Department of Defense has been funding Ebola trials on humans, trials which started just weeks before the outbreak in Guinea and Sierra Leone occurred. The report claims that the DoD gave a contract worth $140 million to Tecmira, a Canadian pharmaceutical company, to conduct Ebola research. This research work involved injecting and infusing healthy humans with the deadly Ebola virus. Is Dr. Broderick onto something? What other events in history bear witness to such a gross accusation? In a national security memo dated April 24, 1974, titled Implications of Worldwide Population Growth for U.S. Security and Overseas Interests, Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of the State in the administrations of Presidents Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, wrote, quote, "Depopulation should be the highest priority of foreign policy towards the Third World. Depopulation, to depopulate something, means to ravage, to ruin, to reduce the population of, especially by violence, disease, etc." Mr. Kissinger then continued, "The United States economy will require large and increasing amounts of minerals from abroad, especially from less developed countries. This means they are going to destroy the population of mainly third world countries." The basic thesis of this declassified security memo is that population growth, especially in less developed countries, like in Africa, is a threat to U.S. national security. The threat of unmitigated population growth in these areas would lead to civil unrest and political instabilities. The paper continues, "Wherever a lessening of population pressures through reduced birth rates can increase the prospects for such stability, population policy becomes irrelevant to resource supplies and the economic interests of the United States. The location of known reserves of higher grade ores of most minerals favors increasing dependence of all industrialized regions on imports from less developed countries. The real problems of minerals supply lies not in basic physical sufficiency, but in the politico-economic issues of access, terms for exploration and exploitation, and division of the benefits among producers, consumers, and host country governments. Are Ebola-affected nations in West Africa host countries for valuable resources? Would the U.S. government implement policies that enhanced its interest in the political, economic, and social stability of these populations? In a policy paper published in 2000, Rebuilding America's Defenses, Strategy, Forces, and Resources for a New Century, it states that the art of warfare will be vastly different than it is today. Combat likely will take place in new dimensions. Advanced forms of biological warfare that can target specific genotypes may transform biological warfare, these weapons, from the realm of terror to a politically useful tool. Is the spread of Ebola politically useful? Another case, known as the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, was an infamous clinical study conducted between 1932 and 1972, where the U.S. Public Health Service knowingly infected hundreds of impoverished rural African American men with syphilis and left others untreated. The men thought they were receiving free health care, but instead were being used as guinea pigs to study the natural progression of the disease. Over 600 test subjects were enrolled in the study, 201 of them who did not have syphilis when the study started. The 40-year Tuskegee experiment knowingly failed to treat patients with syphilis and infected others without their knowledge, even after the 1940s validated penicillin as an effective treatment for the disease. According to the CDC, the men were told they were being treated for bad blood, while at the same time they were being infected with syphilis by the U.S. government. They were offered free food, medical care, and even burial insurance for participating in the study. It wasn't until a whistleblower that major changes occurred in U.S. law and regulation on protection of participants in clinical studies such as these. Is it possible that the spread of Ebola is another Tuskegee experiment? AIM-TV pointed out several weeks ago that the CDC just happens to own the patent on Ebola in up to 70% of its mutated strains. The patent, Human Ebola Virus Species and Compositions and Methods thereof, CA2741523A1, puts the CDC in the unique position of profiting in the billions if an Ebola outbreak worsens. In the deposit statement, it reads, the invention provides the isolated human Ebola, Ebola viruses denoted as Bundi Bugyo Ebobun, deposited with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, in Atlanta, Georgia, United States of America on November 26, 2007. On the background of the invention, it states, quote, the family Filoviridae consists of two genera, Marburg virus and Ebola virus, which have likely evolved from a common ancestor. The genus Ebola virus includes 4 species, Zaire, Sudan, Reston, and Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast Ebola viruses, which have, with the exception of Reston and Cote d'Ivoire Ebola virus, been associated with large hemorrhagic fever outbreaks in Africa with high case fatality rates anywhere between 53% and 90%. Should we be skeptical of a government agency that stands to profit in the billions of dollars if an Ebola outbreak worsens? Who else stands to profit in a worst-case scenario? Interestingly, the stock of a Canadian pharmaceutical company named Tecmira has since skyrocketed on news of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. The giant spike in its shares coincided with the FDA's recent announcement that the agency would loosen its hold on the development of Tecmira's experimental Ebola drug. In September, health professionals announced in a press release that they would begin clinical trials in affected nations to fight the disease, sending the stock soaring. On July 9th, Tecmira Pharmaceuticals in Canada announced it received an initial $1.5 million investment from America's Monsanto, with tens of millions more to follow. The company's press release explains that the partnership is related to Tecmira's patented agri-pharma products, in other words, drugs for plants. Now, Monsanto is the largest agricultural seed supplier in the world. The company has also become one of the most hated over its genetically modified food products, GMOs, and the unethical methods the multinational corporation uses. While the Monsanto-Tecmira partnership has no known connection to the current Ebola epidemic, the Canadian pharmaceutical company's deal with the U.S. Department of Defense is specifically for Ebola. A second press release 2 weeks ago from Tecmira Pharmaceuticals announced the deal with the Pentagon. The U.S. military is paying the company $140 million to test drug treatments for Ebola. The announcement describes how the study is still in its infancy, testing low doses of drugs on healthy subjects to see how high the doses can get before the body has adverse reactions. AIM-TV suspects one of the main reasons infected Ebola patients have been transferred back to the United States for treatment, potentially infecting countless more people, is to study the effects of an Ebola vaccine in a controlled medical environment. African hospitals do not provide this setting, but Atlanta's Emory University Hospital, where the patients have been transferred, provides perfect conditions. At least 2 patients have already been transferred to this location, and Atlanta, of course, is the home to the Centers for Disease Control. Also likely not a coincidence. If the CDC owns the patent on Ebola and stands to profit immensely from it, do these carriers not carry with them valuable intellectual property? One blogger notes, the most fascinating aspect of the Ebola vaccine manufacturing process is how quickly they have brought it to the clinical trials phase. It is virtually impossible for vaccine manufacturers to produce and deliver these drugs in the timeline they have proposed. It typically takes several years from the point of initial vaccine development to human clinical trials, a process which the manufacturers claim is being done in weeks and months. The only way it would have been possible was through years of planning and procurement. The trouble with the spread of Ebola is that its symptoms mimic the flu virus. According to the World Health Organization, a sudden onset of fever, intense weakness, muscle pain, headache, and sore throat are typical early warning signs. How is one to know if they've been infected by Ebola until it's too late? The CDC has emphasized that Ebola cannot be transferred through the air, and it's not an airborne transmittable disease. But can we be so sure of this? WHO states officially on its website that Ebola infection occurs from direct contact through broken skin or mucous membranes with the blood or other bodily fluids or secretions, stool, urine, saliva, semen of infected carriers. Infection can also occur if broken skin or mucous membranes of a healthy person come into contact with environments that have been contaminated with an Ebola patient's infectious fluids, such as soiled clothing, bed linen, or used needles. Skeptics believe that authorities are being less than transparent regarding the possibility of the disease mutating into an airborne strain. Now remember, when the outbreak first occurred several months ago, the CDC assured us that the infection rate would be limited to just a few thousand people before containment. But now, the same federal agency is warning that Ebola infections could total upwards of 1.4 million people in Africa alone by the end of January 2015. With a margin of error so large, how can we be sure that they're not also wrong about the threat of airborne transmission? A little research on the subject will show that Ebola may in fact be airborne already. Studies in Canada showing that airborne transmission is possible from pigs to monkeys without any direct contact between them. Pigs and monkeys were placed in separate cages during a 2012 study and contracted the disease. This is impossible unless the disease was transferred through the air. One scientist involved with the study, Dr. Gary Kobinger, from the National Microbiology Laboratory and the Health Agency of Canada, suggested that the Ebola virus appeared to be spreading through the air. He noted, quote, "What we suspect is happening is large droplets. They can stay in the air but not long. They don't go far," he explained. "But they can be absorbed in the airway, and this is how the infection starts. And this is what we think because we saw a lot of evidence in the lungs of the non-human primates that the virus got in that way," end quote. There is some debate as to what officially defines an airborne disease or not, whether droplets technically qualifies as airborne, but this is really just semantics. And do we really have time to debate semantics? The official definition in medical terms of an airborne disease is a virus that has the ability to stay alive without a liquid carrier. This sounds simple enough. Bottom line, these studies prove Ebola can be transferred and infect others through the air, whether it's through droplets or non-liquid form. If Ebola is airborne, according to studies in transmission from pigs to monkeys that had no direct contact with one another held in separate cages, why couldn't it also be transmitted this way to humans? Alarmingly, the CDC has now admitted this, suggesting that casual contact can, with infected patients, transfer the virus, meaning it can travel through the air, and that being within approximately 3 feet or within the room or care area for a prolonged period of time with an infected patient, not wearing recommended personal protective equipment, or having direct brief contact with them could spread the disease. Although obtuse in its explanation and a bit deceptive, the bottom line is clear. Ebola is very likely airborne. The UN is now warning that a nightmare scenario may be unfolding and that the Ebola virus could in fact be airborne already and spreading at an unprecedented rate. The CDC has also warned that in order to properly quarantine the virus and stop it from spreading, at least 70% of cases must be quarantined immediately in order for the disease to burn itself out. According to CDC Director Tom Frieden, only then would the outbreak reach a tipping point and the infection rate likely decline. Is this realistic? I can't help but think that a 70% quarantine of infections is unrealistic even in medically sophisticated countries like the United States and Europe, let alone sub-Saharan Africa. Now let's pause for a moment and review the facts. How did we go from repeated assurances of total containment and quarantine just a few months ago, reminders from the President, WHO, and the CDC that the Ebola virus was an unlikely event, and controllable, to a rapid shift and increased likelihood that the virus could result in a full-blown pandemic? I mean, seriously, the UN chief is now warning that the disease could be airborne. Again, in no way is this video meant to spread fear or prevent those tragically infected by the disease from receiving immediate medical treatment. But as journalists and concerned citizens, we must acknowledge that, as usual, we are not getting all the information, being pitched half-truths by the media, and maybe even bold-faced lies from our political leadership. An event Obama once called unlikely is now as likely and fatal as the Ebola virus itself. And what we do next could be the difference between containment and a more aggressive outbreak. To help hold those in political power accountable, please like and share this video with everyone you know. For updates and more videos like these, subscribe to us on YouTube. Transcript, link, and sources will be attached to this video and also on our website at amtvmedia.com. I'm Christopher Green. Make it viral, hard-hitting, and in your face.
Okay, again, that was AMTV. We have the one that was in Dallas. He died, and I was telling you about that. I have it here from Ben Swan, RT. Everybody's reporting on it. Out of Ben Swan, first Ebola-related death in U.S. confirmed. Excuse me. Okay, the first Ebola patient in the U.S. has died at 7:51 a.m. on Wednesday, reports say. Thomas Duncan, 42, was a Liberian man who had recently traveled to Africa and was the first U.S. citizen to have contracted the deadly virus. Duncan died while in isolation care at the Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital. It is with profound sadness and heartfelt disappointment that we must inform you of the death of Thomas Eric Duncan this morning at 7:51 a.m., said a spokesman for the hospital in Dallas, according to the BBC. In recent days, the New York Times reports Duncan's condition had worsened from serious to critical condition. Medical staff were on hand to support Duncan after this with fluids and electrolytes to replenish the loss of fluids, which occurs when one is infected with Ebola. Duncan was also being treated with an experimental drug called Bronchodilfolvar, I can't pronounce it, to help combat the virus. And you heard a little bit about the whole connection with that drug and the pharmaceutical company that is making it, and the FDA loosening restrictions on vaccines. Says here, upon returning from his trip to Africa, Duncan went to the hospital complaining of a stomach ache and a fever, but hospital staff failed to test for Ebola on this visit and sent Duncan home with what Duncan home. It was only days later when Duncan returned to the hospital that the virus was found to be in Duncan's system. According to CNN, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Thomas Frieden, offered his condolences to the Duncan family after this death. He is a face that we associate now with Ebola, said Frieden. According to the same report, in order to help prevent the spread of Ebola, the body of Duncan will be cremated. As of now, Duncan's family members and close to 50 other Dallas residents are being monitored after having come into either first or second degree contact with Duncan after he returned from Africa. So we have that. Just more great news. There is a report out of Next News Network, and this one is Frisco deputy quarantined with Ebola symptoms. And this is someone that their job is to be in contact with people. So, maybe a chance he spread it around. So we can kind of see something unfolding. I'm going to play this short clip. It's only about minute and a half long. And then I'm going to kind of get into what AM TV was covering when it comes to some connections.
Gary Franchi here, nextnewsnetwork.com. As we reported earlier today, Thomas Eric Duncan has died, and now we have new information right now that a sheriff's deputy who went into Duncan's apartment has now gone into the hospital. He's in quarantine with Ebola symptoms or Ebola-like symptoms. We are currently awaiting a press conference right now to get all the details on this fact. This is a rapidly developing story, so we will keep you updated right here at Next News Network. Stay tuned. Right now, all we know is that a sheriff's deputy who went into Duncan's apartment is exhibiting signs of Ebola. So this would potentially be the second person confirmed in the United States that has come down with Ebola, who had direct contact with Duncan or some sort of maybe some of Duncan's bodily fluids inside his apartment. From what we've been able to research so far, we do know that we do know they did not come in contact with Duncan. There's some conflicting reports, but we're aware that he did go into Duncan's apartment. So this would be the second person in the United States originating with Ebola because they came in contact with patient zero. Stay tuned. The Next News Network will have more details as this frightening story unfolds.
So you have that out of Next News Network, and how many other sheriffs did he come in contact with, and how far could this have spread just by him being how many people maybe he could have pulled over and gave speeding tickets to, and how far could this have spread just by him getting it? And I don't know if you heard the hot mic. And this was after the White House press conference on Ebola. And a hot mic catch reporters talking about Ebola. I'm going to play this clip here, and just listen carefully.
The most interesting thing is the travel and stuff.
Yeah, we're screwed.
Which is what
I'm feeling fluish. Just so you know, so I'm gonna give you a big kiss.
No, I don't want your kiss.
This DC test comes back positive. I'm doing filters all weekend.
This what?
DC test.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be doing filters.
Oh, that's right. That stupid man, a stupid mic. Yeah, did you hear that, everyone?
Yeah.
Right here.
Okay, you caught that. The one person you heard saying that, it's not saying in this. I forget who it was. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Let me see if I can find it here. I should be able to, so. Maybe. Huh. Thought I'd seen it here before. Maybe not. I want to say it was major. See, I can't even. I had it there for a second and I lost it. And InfoWars just has it as a reporter, but it's a reporter most of you know the name of. If I could find it. And I was thinking maybe the Blaze had it. But I'm not seeing it, so I'm going to scroll just a little farther if I can't find it. And I'm just going to move on. I'm not seeing it here. A lot of more articles have come out, so it's kind of. Okay, I don't see it. But you hear what they're not telling you on mainstream media. He didn't go out and go, we're doomed. This is not good. The one reporter, the lady, states, if the DC test comes back positive, I'm doing it. And it says inaudible all weekend. And what she was saying is, I guess, InfoWars should really update this article. And what she said was, I'm doing phone interviews or whatever. Basically, she was going to stay home and do all of her work through the phone, not go into the office or whatever. So we see what they're really thinking versus what they're telling the public. Everything's cool. There's no reason to get too concerned. We should be more concerned about the Ebola over in Africa than us. We should still fly our own people in with Ebola, known Ebola, and take the risk of it breaking out here in America, which now, with this possible sheriff having contact, how many people has he come into contact with? How many people has he come in contact with that really object to coming in contact with the sheriff or sheriff deputy? It's kind of getting a little out of control if you think about it. I know I see people already, the prepper type people already trying to prepare, which I'm even thinking about at least preparing just in case something does happen. Not saying it will, but why take the chance of not being prepared? Get things, seal up your windows and air vents. You never know what could happen if you got a whole bunch of people around with Ebola freaking out because they're ready to die and not really care about your life. Um, you could have people thinking they're going to die, blame it, on the government, which there's chances it can be justified. Don't blame it on the government that they're running around with Ebola. They know they got it. Everybody's coming down sick. You see that zombie apocalypse type scenario playing out. The Walking Dead, they don't have a vaccine that'll definitely cure. If too many people are coming out with it, would they have those experimental vaccines on hand for all these people? No, but they do get the FEMA coffins, which I actually heard on the more mainstream local talk radio. The local station plays like Glenn Beck and other people during the day, but there's a couple local broadcasts on there. And they actually brought it up, the fact that they have these coffins that can be sealed for these type of scenarios. People that have a contagious disease can be safely buried. And if you know anything about the FEMA coffins, as they're called, they can hold up about 4 people in each one, and they have fields, not a field, fields of these coffins. You tie that to some of the stuff that's been going on with the buying of ammo and weapons and armored vehicles. You combine that with the open borders. Combine all this, there seems to be a picture being laid out. Whether all of this stuff actually links up, I think that's up to the person to come to their own conclusions. I definitely think it should be questioned. And, AMTV brought up the fact that the links between the pharmaceutical company Monsanto and what he kind of failed to mention was vaccine program, Monsanto. Oh, yeah, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation vaccine programs, Africa vaccine programs here in America with children going back to school, respiratory ailments that might have now killed someone. I believe there was a report out about that. And paralyzing and spinal problems. Either we are experiencing just extremely bad luck, or they're playing their hands. They're playing their cards. They're putting everything out on the table. Which many can say that, well, that would kind of coincide with them not really hiding what they're doing anymore. That might coincide with the fact that they just don't care that that they are bound, determined to control the population. And many of these people have written or talked about the fact that the population is getting too large. Again, all of these things seeming to kind of play into their hand, play into what they're looking to achieve, that their stated goals have been. I definitely think it deserves a second look. if you choose not to, I think you're just cheating yourself. Not saying that all this is 100% positively connected. I'm saying that it should be looked at. And I think this is where the gentleman that put out the article that landed front page out in or the I think it was the article, but that landed front page out there in Africa that basically was blaming the U.S. and the government basically and these corporations and pharmaceuticals on causing this. And that was when I heard that the first time, that was the first time me hearing it was through this. And I'm thinking, I'm just trying to connect dots. And then I see that people have brought this up themselves, and prominent people in their field, where they're at least this doctor seems to be. Again, I could be wrong. And that's why it's really up to you to look at it, come to your own conclusions. But I'm someone that's been skeptical for a pretty good period of time when it comes to the pharmaceutical companies, the vaccine programs. And you can look at me biased when it comes to that. There's some bias, and these are my opinions. And you may come to a different conclusion. You may think, well, some of this is just coincidence. It really doesn't come down to there being a true connection. Okay. And I hope there isn't a true connection. That's really the last thing I want, is there to actually be a true connection, that true deception, that true evil being played onto us. So, of course, I don't want it to be true, because I'm trying to look towards the future, trying to play a part in changing the way society is operated and the way society thinks. I want to see a true free society where these different cultures, these different beliefs, these different lifestyles can coexist and have the freedom to prosper as an individual. Not because you are gay or not gay, not because you're white or black or Asian or Mexican or anything. You prosper on your own back. You as an individual decide your own fate. You want to be a little small town farmer? Not really. You just want to be that mountain man, live off the land. You have that opportunity. If you want to be someone that's just really involved in technology, you have that possibility. If you want some lifestyle somewhere in between, you have that possibility. But us as a society, that we also have to change our way of interacting with each other. And it really does start with the liberty, non-aggression people. You're that stepping stone. And there's other stepping stones, and all these are jabs at the status quo, the state, the statism thought, the ideology of the state. And there's many things that we can do as a group of individuals. And it's not change your lifestyle, change your the way you live your culture, or it's not that. It's when you interact with people, no matter what lifestyle lifestyle culture you are. Just be that compassionate, loving person in that interaction. That doesn't mean you have to go out of your way for people. That means when you're walking out the door, hold the door for someone. If you see someone getting ready to drop something, help them out. Simple things. Big influence. Maybe throw in the idea of liberty while you're there. I have one here from, it's an older clip. It's from Adam versus Man, and it's an interview with Jeffrey Tucker. And it's the death blow to the state. And, give me a second here. Okay. No. Okay. This one's with Jeffrey Tucker again, death blow to the state. So I'm going to go ahead and play this.
Hey, there he is with his beautiful bow tie. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeffrey Tucker is the originator, the founding member of Liberty.me and publisher of Laissez-Faire Books, and he is out with a new story today. I'm actually really excited about this because this has been a theme in some of our most enlightening conversations, and I always enjoy hearing from you on these futuristic technology, social government interaction topics. But the story today is the peer-to-peer economy, death blow to the state. And you know what? I got to step in before I even turn this over to you because I'm really excited to have you on. But it sounds like to a lot of people radical language. Oh my gosh, people working together is the death blow to the state. And it's like, no, really, that's it. How does that work, Jeffrey? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, hey Adam, it's really great. I have to say that I think in part my article here is influenced by a lot of your work. You know.
Oh well, thank you.
If you think back when you first began broadcasting, I mean, you're kind of the master of peer-to-peer technology. You know, you turn on the camera, you broadcast out to your users. Your users have the same power to do the same thing. You know, they could turn on a camera and broadcast, and you're dealing with, you know, peer-to-peer, and that's why you've had so much influence and why you're such a pioneer in this area.
I am Adam versus the Man, death blow to the state, right here, 5 days a week. Thank you for that. Always making me feel better about the show. I really appreciate that. No, and it is.
It's this radical stuff. If you think about
no, hold on. I have to like demystify this and explain the process of me inspiring you, because it's like me ripping off your work and rambling about it online, and then bringing you into the conversation, and I spurn like one or two more thoughts, and you actually like write it up as something intelligent and coherent, which I would normally just take and rip off and read on my show. So.
Well, you know, it's funny. I felt like I had to write this. I've been speaking about this topic for a while now, but I realized I hadn't actually put it down on paper. So the whole thing sort of came to me because I was hanging out. I know what happened. I first took a picture of a stained glass window I thought was pretty and shot it around to my friends, right? Mm-hmm. And then I went over to CVS and I noticed they still had film for sale. And I thought, well, this is strange. You know, we're sort of living like with 1 foot in the old world and 1 foot in the new world. You know, and so I began to think, like, what is the difference between these worlds? And the difference really comes down to in the past we relied on third-party intermediaries, you know, to like connect us with anybody. Now we can make direct connections with people thanks to technology. And we do it so routinely we don't even think about it much, you know, whether it's calling a cab through Uber or, I list a lot of examples of peer-to-peer technology, file sharing online. You know, Bitcoin's obviously a radical version of that, but even the fact that you can make like a movie, you know, yourself and just upload it and reach, you know, billions of people instantly. These are revolutionary technologies, and it's only been about, I began to look it up, it's only been about 15 years in which this has been possible, which is a tiny, tiny slice of time. And during that time, we've seen like a kind of a crumbling of the consensus over the state. So what this article does is it re-renders the statist enterprise as basically a gigantic third-party based racket. You know,
hold on. Before we get into this, and maybe this sounds like a side note, but I think this is going to be important later. I want to examine this strange phenomenon that you describe, that at a pharmacy they actually have a whole wall of what is it called? Film? Film.
Called film.
That's 35 millimeter something, right? Like you.
Right.
How does? Tell me, old man. How does this technology work? No, I'm old enough. I'm old enough. But this is like it, and I understand if you're. I'm not trying to belittle film as an art, because I know there's more to it, and I understand that if you're a fine artist, there's certain things that you can do with film, and I've worked in a dark room before, and I get that. But that's not what we're talking about here. This is people that who are just doing casual photography, and there's still a market for this film processing. And these people have smartphones in their pockets that are probably producing better photographs. Or if they spent if they're going and buying film on a regular basis, keeping CVS, CVS doesn't put that stuff in their store if no one's buying it.
That's right.
People are buying this.
The transition from old to new, it takes a while, right? I mean, it goes much more slowly than you and I would like.
Well, it should be accelerating, right? And what I want to ask is, how does the market tolerate such inefficiency?
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's amazing how the market's able to exist, in this sort of coming and going state all the time. Like it's got its foot in the 20th century and the 21st century at the same time. Like the same store. I mean, I love going to the stores, obviously, right? But they're trying to fob off a bunch of CD players and DVD players on everybody too. But radically declining prices. I mean, even in the store, these were originally like $125, and they were trying to get rid of them at $70 and $60,
Walkman, where they're selling Walkman there, for cassette tapes,
cassette tapes.
8-track players, hey, we still got this stock of 8-track players down, they're $3 each now. It's like an $800 stereo deck, but it's an 8-track player. Sorry, $3.
Yeah, Adam, it's interesting you mentioned that, because they had a huge bargain bin of 50-cent movies or something like that. You can buy.
Wait, people buy movies?
Hundreds of movies that you can just buy for 50 cents each, which is probably too expensive at this point.
Well,
God,
no, it's
wonderful, beautiful upheavals, huh?
I mean, for people that haven't figured out how to download from the Pirate Bay or click over to YouTube, they're still buying DVDs and physical movies, and I'm almost tempted. Here's where I'm a central planner. Stop being stupid, people. Seriously, be more efficient. This is where I want. This is my greatest temptation to statism here. Is all right. Let's just make this shit illegal. There ought to be a law against film and DVD players and CD players and cassettes and 8-tracks in 2014.
Yeah.
You won't hear me say it. Nothing else tempts me to say that. But seriously, this market inefficiency. This is why the government wants to suppress the internet, because it accelerates that process and creates corporate upheaval.
But look, I mean, Adam, even I'm kind of obviously really into technology, but even I'm startled almost every day. I can't believe what happens to me that I didn't really it's obvious once it happens, but before it happens, you don't think about it.
Right.
So an example is that last night, or maybe it was actually yesterday afternoon, I started thinking about Beethoven, and I thought, I wouldn't mind hearing the Ninth Symphony. It's been a while. So I quickly went to my Google Play, for which I paid $10 a month, and I typed in Beethoven's Ninth, and I immediately got Beethoven Symphonies 1 through 9 performed by Herbert von Karajan. Immediately on one screen, I could just click any symphony or any movement and instantly hear one of the finest performances in human history. That 20 years ago I would have had to buy in a box set, CD, and even at that moment I just felt this rush of, oh my God, how is this even possible?
Some people can't handle that.
It's huge. We're in a totally. Maybe this is one of the reasons I wrote the article. You just have this sudden realization that we're in a completely different world than we were 15 or 20 years ago.
Well,
I got
to point out
profound implications of that.
Jeffrey Tucker doesn't just wear a bow tie. He actually sips martinis out of Liberty.me engraved glasses and listens to classical music. Yeah, he's fucking legit like that. Okay, please continue. Before I get too much of a man crush, finish, please.
No.
Back to the story.
Yeah. So what are the implications, right? I mean, what does it mean? I think politically it's interesting because we're going to be less and less reliant on third parties of all sorts, and that includes the state. Here's another critical thing. When politicians and bureaucrats come along and try to take these things away from us, I mean, they're not going to do it. They're not going to be able to get away with it. People are really, really attached to their P2P structures now. In every area of life, and we depend on them fundamentally. We won't go back 10 years. We won't go back 5 years. We won't even go back like 8 months ago. All right. So there's a fundamental intolerance that's developed towards these central planners that are trying to take away our peer-to-peer relationships. Like cities that have tried to ban Uber taxi have had a terrible time of it. Like real protests. Or New York's dealing with this right now with this Airbnb. You know, they're harassing this company that allows people just to rent out the extra space in their home to some like guy coming in, you know, who happens to be coming through town. People don't understand, like, why are the politicians against this? This is a cool thing, you know. So get out of our hair, you know,
because they're politicians.
That's really important. That changes the debate, I think, over free markets versus statism, right? Because in the old days, free markets were oftentimes just about large corporations that we dealt with, and people are not very sympathetic to corporations. But nowadays, free markets are more about direct human relationships between you and me, and there people get a little bit intolerant towards, the monsters who are trying to prevent our relationships from happening. And so I mentioned two other implications. Another one is that I think it causes us to think more globally. Like when you go to the app economy, which no politician designed, no politician ever imagined, no bureaucrat created, it's like 3 million apps you can download immediately for your phone. You don't even know who made them, where they're from. They could be from Belarus, from San Jose, Costa Rica. It could be from Shanghai. What does it even matter? Nobody cares about this crap anymore. All you care about is having cool stuff. That changes like the nature of the nation state. You see what I mean?
Absolutely. But there's something deeper going on as well. Like even if government was able to keep track of everything that was happening in a peer-to-peer environment, the amount of control exercised is so much lower. I mean, you can't tax it as efficiently. The way that like you can't, like if you have, the traditional business model of government is find the corporate interests, eliminate their competition, get them either and steal part of their income as a protection racket, or let them buy you off and direct that. And when businesses are no longer I kind of go both ways on this in looking at this dynamic, because you can see that there is an atomization. Every individual is now a business. Every individual can connect directly with other service providers, with people in their communities. I think the other thing that's growing up that's so beautiful, even beyond this, and I mean, just having moved to LA and getting to know people here, the gift economy, the barter economy.
Yeah.
You know, people are just like, well, I like you. Can I help you out? I expect that you'll help me out. And people are so wealthy with today, in general, with today's technology, that they're able to do that. They're, and even if you're living on Skid Row in LA, you know, it's not a food insecure lifestyle. You know, people are capable of comfortable in their ability to survive and feed each other and be fed. And that is like opening up this incredible gift and barter economy that the government can't control. But then I kind of go the other way and see that those are the prevailing, those are much bigger dynamics. But at the same time, in some things, there is a concentration. And that does kind of worry me going the other direction, like you mentioned.
Like what? What's the concentration?
Google.
Yeah, but you know, I've thought about this. Why is Google so cool? Why is it growing? It's because it's providing ever more tools for peer-to-peer relationships.
Yes and no. And yes, they're in the business of doing that. Absolutely not. I can't dispute that. But you look at YouTube. Google bought YouTube. Why does Google is buying up smaller companies and in many ways assimilating them into what it needs to do in order to maintain keep on government's good side and keep paying its taxes, whereas instead, without that, you'd have a greater atomization at the corporate level as well, and you'd see that breaking down and localizing more. And while Google is doing amazing things and providing amazing legitimate services with new technologies, I'm bothered by the fact that under current American corporatism, all of these technologies are being concentrated in the hands of a few. And I have suffered directly as a result of this. I'm not saying pity me or anything like that, but I was on YouTube, before it got assimilated into Google, before all of these new controls and free speech barriers got put on. And it's not free speech because it's private property, but it would be much more public, and there would be competition if it wasn't for that. So there's got to be some threat to that still that we're dealing with.
So
right?
I agree with this. But here's the deal. Google has to continue to be like slavishly devoted to its customers insofar as possible, or they're going to inspire wild competition in the other direction. And people are already working on things like this. I've been spending a good part of the day looking through the new service called MaidSoft. I don't know if you've looked at it, but it's a peer-to-peer app economy that doesn't rely on ISPs or corporate structures at all. And
right?
This,
hold on.
The next wave.
And I will point out, it is far easier now because of the nature of the technology to challenge Google and say, well, I'm going to program that in my basement and I'm going to just put it up on the internet and give it to the world. And that's important too. It's certainly better than, government making sure that we only have 3 major car manufacturers in America.
Right.
It's certainly less restrictive than that.
The thing is, Adam, that a lot of this is like a process. And that's what I tried to chronicle in my article was like, that we're seeing the dynamic take place. I mean, you can see the trajectory of history ever more towards peer-to-peer relationships and away from third-party intermediaries, whether it's corporations or governments that are controlling our lives. And you can see the dynamic at work. I mean, we're obviously not there yet, but the more the public gets attached to these peer-to-peer technologies, the more we're going to insist on our rights to deal with each other in direct exchange relationships based on equal power, And that's kind of an amazing thing. I mean, I think it may be the dominant economic theme of the 21st century. I mean, if the 19th century was all about agriculture, the 20th century was all about big industry, the 21st century is really about peer-to-peer relationships. We're not there yet, but that's what the next 80 years are going to be about. But that implies the breakdown of the structures that we hate so much.
Okay, and I can say, to play devil's advocate, okay, this is going to weaken the government. This is going to minimize its role in controlling the economy, so on and so forth. I can see all that. But death blow to the state, how does this actually play out that way?
Well, so that's a very strong phrase. The reason I use that phrase is because, first of all, I really believe it. I think the distributed network is the great tool that we have in our favor. This is an innovation. As I say, it's about 15 years old. It began with basically Napster. That's what popularized it. But what it means is that on any node, the whole service can exist on an infinite number of times. And it cannot be crushed. Like you said earlier, you can always go into a warehouse and raid it. You can control one corporation by meeting with its board of directors and say, let's make a deal. But if something lives on a distributed network, that means it's potentially infinite number of copies and infinite number of nodes, and there's no central point of failure. At this point, the nation state is basically completely at a loss to control it. And that is a huge, an epic innovation in the history of liberty.
Okay, and I agree, but let me ask the harder question. Maybe you can end this conversation by endorsing my presidential candidacy. But how does this then play out, and how do you actually hope that the state is going to fall? And if I may, I would just suggest that localization is how it's going to happen one way or another. Either governments are going to fall apart from the top down, and even though Crimea is getting assimilated into Russia right now, we see turmoil leads to localization, breakdown of central control leads to atomization of governments, fracturing. We see the global secessionist movement all over the world. There are different, groups of people that want to break away from their centrally controlled state. And I would say it's going to happen one way or another. But can we do this peacefully? Can we have, as I suggest, an orderly dissolution of the federal government and of governments around the world and localize that way? And is this going to lay the groundwork for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you asked really the critical question. I'm very, very interested in this because, even now, you wonder why a lot of parts of the state continue to survive. For example, the post office. Why the hell is that still around? Right?
That's the least of my concerns.
It's the least, but it's an important symbol. This is an extremely stupid, irrelevant, and ridiculous institution. So why is it still there? So I'm tracking this very carefully because if the post office actually becomes to be dismantled at some level, I mean, it's going to happen gradually. Then I think we're going to see a model for that. What's going to happen to the whole state? I mean, what happens to states that just become basically completely irrelevant to our lives, except for being obvious parasites. And I don't mean just to you and me who are ideologically conscious, right?
No. Ideal. Thank you for that ideological conscience. I thought you were going to say, unlike people like you and me who can see that the state is a parasite because we read the news and pay attention.
Yeah, right. It seems very obvious to us, but it's not obvious to the average person. But what happens when it just becomes so completely obvious? And look, the consciousness is dawning. I mean, no matter how you measure it, it's all over the world. I mean, whether it's polls or just whatever. I mean, it's really critical that we're more and more living off these peer-to-peer technologies in our daily lives, like every single second. Not just us, people all over the world. As I said, no politician invented the app economy. They didn't invent file sharing. They've actually been the enemy of technology now for like 20 years. They've been trying to shut down the internet, trying to control distributed. But here's the thing. Every time they try to do this, like it goes crazy and metastasizes the other direction. Like they try to shut down the Silk Road. Now we've got peer-to-peer Silk Roads that you can download and start your own Silk Road right there on your laptop at home on a distributed network. I mean, how cool is that? Yeah. They try to shut down online pharmacy. There's more than ever. They tried to shut down file sharing. I used to worry, Adam, that like copyright was going to lead to the censorship of 70 years worth of literature. Okay, that was too pessimistic a prediction because I forgot about the fact that people want these books, so therefore they're going to be online. I've yet to find a book that's been printed anytime in the last 70 years that I know about that's not available very easily through piracy. How great is that?
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of peer-to-peer and new technologies and brilliant predictions, you predicted $1,000 Bitcoin by the end of last year. Did you predict that it would come down to where it is now, around $450?
No, I didn't. I mean, people say the right price for Bitcoin is somewhere between zero and infinity. I think
probably.
That's right.
Yeah, something like that. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I should stop making predictions because I happen to be right on that one. That was really great. It was really amazing. I didn't expect it. Although, I mean, even at 450, it's funny how Bitcoin is, Adam. You've noticed this, right? People get all hopped up and excited when it's going up in price. And then they get kind of like depressed and down the dumps when it's going down.
And stop promoting it. I'm totally guilty of that myself. I have not been talking about Bitcoin for the last month on the show. I mean, we have been glancingly here and there. And today we covered Pentagon looking at Bitcoin as a terrorist threat. Holy crap! I thought that was a story from The Onion, but no, it was from Fox. And funny. It's yeah, but okay, you're right. We've been down on it, and it hasn't had that enthusiasm that really pushes it and drives it, and it makes you wonder. But it's, I'm pretty confident in my prediction that the net worth of all cryptocurrencies in circulation will continue to go up at the same general exponential rate over time. It's just you can't say that about Bitcoin because it's only one cryptocurrency, and already, and maybe this is what's exciting about the recent decline. That I want to use the proper term because the mainstream media is going the demise, the crash, and it's it still has gone from $0 to $450. Hello, so but. The recent decline, it might be a good thing in that it provokes people to look at altcoins, and I don't just mean look at them as other investment or cryptocurrency vehicles, but really look at innovation in other altcoins to see what is the next thing, what can we do to make it more distributed.
God, yeah, I mean, you and I are pretty smart, but there's no way we can anticipate what an actual market in currency would look like. I mean, it's been shut down for 100 years. We have no clue what it will look like when competition comes to real-life currency like we're seeing right now. I mean, is there going to be one winner? Are there going to be 10,000 currencies that are competing with each other? Yeah, we don't know. It's very exciting. I love markets. I love competition, and I love freedom. And to see these forces brought to the whole subject of money and finance, and distributed systems of contracts and this kind of stuff, it's amazing to be alive. It's wonderful to be able to watch it and see what's going to happen.
Well, you say there hasn't been a market for currency for 100 years. I just also want to point out, as someone who thinks it's obscene that the government has taken over manufacturing or paving of roads and made it such a dangerous, destructive environment for everyone, but also kept us stuck in the same technological paradigm there for over 100 years. We have not, as you say, we have not had a market for currencies for 100 years. We have not. It's I mean really longer than that even, but we have a true market. But we have not had a market for transportation infrastructure for
That's right.
over 100 years. Holy crap! Can you imagine where we would be with that? Anyway, I think.
Hey, here's another area, Adam. We haven't had a market in like justice
Oh.
services.
No
you know?
kidding. Well, you know what's funny? That's actually creeping in, and I know this is like kind of a bad example, but because the government's execution of justice services has been so abysmal, you now have a significant market for third-party arbitration, and it's only in limited cases, and it's totally this unique area carved out from the government monopoly because of radical inefficiency, and it only makes sense in certain situations for people who can afford it, but still. It just goes to show that, like, even with all that, but yeah, imagine if we had.
I mean, our system is so ghastly. I mean, the little bit of time you spent a lot more time in jail than I have. You have a lot more street cred than I have. But the little time I was there, I was amazed to see like the number of people in prison for failing to pay child support. Now, this is idiotic. I mean, what the hell? You know,
So
you
we're
don't,
gonna-
you don't
we're
pay
gonna-
your visa
yeah.
bill. This is not a criminal penalty. What are these people doing in jail? I mean,
Well,
they're
though, it'd
certainly
be
not
one thing if it was a
working for
debtor's
money.
prison, and you could say you're going to work off this debt because you legitimately owe someone this money, and you could justify it in that sense, at least on that one factor. But no,
Right.
it's just a further drain on society.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And meanwhile, I don't know if you saw Kathy Reisenwitz had an article like a couple of days ago, or in Reason magazine. It was very interesting. She talked about how like the government created the rape crisis on campus because Title IX specifically said that rape is not a criminal offense. It's like something that should be handled by university administrators. I mean, it was a very interesting article. I didn't even know that. It was totally news to me.
Wow.
But I didn't know that. So here you have.
No, hold on. This is really hold on. I got to say because we have pointed out on the show before, government would rather bust you on the street for smoking pot and having a taillight out than catch a rapist. And the proof is in. They fund that bullshit while there are in Detroit tens of thousands of rape. Well, no, it was 10,000 and then 4,000 and then 8,000 rape kits sitting in labs that they just haven't allocated funding yet to test. They don't want to prevent real crimes. Like, oh, a real crime that we have to prevent, we have to confront a rapist and deal with that and actually provide justice. No, screw that. We'll just pass that off in the university. You're saying that was part of Title IX.
That was
Holy
part of
crap.
Title IX.
I had
According
no
to Kathy,
idea.
she went through the whole history of this.
Wow.
That it's like embedded, like in universities, why universities don't contact the local cops in these cases or anything. They handle them internally, meaning they don't handle them, because that was part of the Title IX's mandates and requirements. So that's like a federal law. I had no clue about this. And so I'm reading this article, remembering when I was in jail, looking at all the people who didn't pay child support in prison, you know, and meanwhile, you know, we've got the government saying that rapists cannot be treated as criminals. They have to be treated as like some sort of administrative like malfunction that should be addressed sometime in the future, you know. So there you have it. There's the government system of justice.
Yeah. Well, hold on. We just got to hold on, Jeffrey. We've got Larkin Rose waiting on the line here, and we want to bring him on. But I want to give you a chance to tell us, if you would briefly, what is the status of Liberty.me?
Oh, Adam. I mean, for God's sake, the site has been alive now for 4 days.
Yeah.
It's so friggin' great. I can't believe it. This is a larger, more wonderful machinery than I ever even imagined a year ago when I first started talking to you about this, you know? I mean, the number of quality articles appearing on there like every hour, the quality of discussions, the chat rooms, the news feeds, the book downloads. I'm watching the analytics. It's just been wonderful. I mean, I hope you have me on again and we can just talk about Liberty Me, because I wanted to build a city in the sky. Like, I believe in the digital cloud. I believe in commerce. I believe in open source knowledge. And like, I combined all those things into one project, and now it's happening. I mean, I can't be happier. What can I say?
Well, it's good to hear. I thought you were still working up to critical mass momentum, but yes, we will have you back on, and look forward to getting into it and everything that's going on there. Yeah. I know it's a growing community, and for people who want to be part of this great experiment in social networking, it is an amazing publishing platform. I encourage you to check it out, liberty.me. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Wonderful.
Okay. I wanted to play this. I think I played it 5 months ago or so. I wanted to play it again for the simple fact that the whole Bitcoin, the peer-to-peer, this is all based on technology, and I've seen a little chat in the chat room about, that depends on internet and electricity. Well, it doesn't depend on internet, some type of computer. Um, and yes, it does depend on electricity. Now, is this a fail-safe if, you know, everything hits the fan? It depends. If America starts falling and you can get out of the country with your money and Bitcoin's still accepted overseas, and that's a way to smuggle your wealth out of the country that's collapsing and taking it out on the citizens by taking everything they have, it might be a good way. Now, if the electric grid starts failing across the world, yeah, you're probably screwed. Again, why you don't put all of your, investments in one basket. You can still use it in certain situations. Of course, there's other situations where, yeah, you will be screwed. Again, that's why you have multiple investments in multiple fields. You know, I would look at everything from gold to seeds to ways of it doesn't mean you have to have all your money in Bitcoin right now. But if you have a chance and things are about to hit the fan and you're trying to get out of the country and you can't get away with having a whole bunch of gold on you or a whole bunch of silver or a whole bunch of cash, maybe slipping something on a thumb drive might be a way of doing that. And if it's accepted in other countries that you decide you have to escape to, well, then, you're going to be able to exchange it back into whatever currency is acceptable wherever you go. But this goes beyond this, and this is, with the understanding of where we are now, not where, well, if the country collapses, okay, yeah, if the country collapses in our lifetime, you never know. We don't know where it's going. The simple fact that we do live in an age of technology and trying to find ways to use that technology in a freer way without being controlled, without being censored, without being watched, trying to interact without third parties, which is the main focus of peer-to-peer, the main focus of, the whole, type of peer-to-peer clouding where a website can be on multiple systems that you can crash one, but it's still there. And there's ways of doing your Bitcoins that way too. So if you do have it all in Bitcoin, you can't get away with maybe a thumb drive. There's already ways out there that you can have it stored encrypted in multiple places so you can access it if you're able to get to a place to connect. Again, all of this is, if something happens, yeah, you might be out of luck. But we've also seen cases where people had hoarded gold, and that didn't help them. They had all of their gold taken away. We've seen a story not too long ago where a gentleman had saved gold and hoarded it when it was supposed to be turned in. Well, his I think it was actually like grandchildren or great-grandchildren, but family members uncovered this stash of gold, and once the government found out about it, bam, it got seized. We've actually seen problems with seeds. We've seen contamination from GMOs. We've seen crops fail, therefore you don't get seeds for the next year. Hopefully you might have some left over. The cash in your pockets devalued. We've seen people not able to access their money in a bank. We've seen people's property taken away. Everything has a risk. Everything has a chance to fail. Again, why you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And again, the more you limit yourself, the more risk you put yourself in. That's something I've had to come to a conclusion on after years of investments. Knowing that, well, you plan on one or two investments, you're definitely planning to fail. So, you don't, no one's forcing anybody into Bitcoin, but when it comes to people that are in touch with technology, which you got to understand, anybody usually anywhere 20s and under, and I'm talking even 30s and under, that have grown up to the growing technology, have been involved in the growing technology. All of the youth right now that's growing up with nothing but technology, this is a way for them to have that technology, to be able to interact with people, to be able to commerce with other people using technology and trying to avoid that third party. And if you think the society that has grown up with technology is just going to cast it off, is a pretty naive thought. And the best thing we can do is anybody that has the ability, that has the knowledge to create freer type programs or networks to be able to freely interact, not be censored. There's countries that they have internet, but they've never accessed anything, at least the everyday person, never access anything liberty related because that access is limited. But because of that, people have come up with ways around that. There's proxies and VPNs, and there's many ways to access the main search engine, because I don't deal with Google for some of the same, well, I can't say I don't deal with Google. I try to stay away from Google unless it's something to promote, the radio broadcasts or UCY or my website. I don't use it for my search engine. I use YouTube, or I might use the connection with other people through Google, but I don't search on it. I don't use it that way. What I do use is Start Page. Well, when you search with Start Page, let's say you click on a link. Well, this is blocked in your country. Oh, really? Go right back, hit the back button, back to the search results on Start Page, hit View by Proxy. You can access it. Simple things like that make the internet free, or allow people to access things that might be censored. Yes, there can be abuses. along with everything else. I think that's where a lot of people lose their understanding. Everything is not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. Everything related to freedom, we constantly have to fight for. It's an ongoing battle. And it's not a new battle. The idea of freedom, the idea of the individual, the idea of liberty has been something that has been thought about, discussed for centuries. And society always reaches a point where it has to rethink that whole ideology and come back to what is freedom, what is liberty. And I think that's where society makes that next giant leap. Because when that society becomes free again, it's able to prosper and advance and come up with new things because they're free to do so. They're free to explore. And we've also reached a certain point where no longer do we cower or kiss the boots of people trying to roll over us. We seem now to be coming to a point where freedom and liberty is being rethought by society. And even though the state still has control, we're not in that true free society. We're reaching that brink of we have to go towards freedom because we're hitting that brink of complete tyranny, complete control. But society has done something that seems to be revolutionary in itself. And that's the simple fact that people right now that have waken up to the concept of freedom and liberty are not waiting for that revolutionary moment to become creative. They are being creative basically in the black market in a way that technology itself has given them the ability to do. 3D printers, Bitcoin, all of this stuff plays a part because in the society that we are in today, technology is a extremely big thing. And that is what is spurring the revolution. So remember, we could easily mock technological advancements, things like Bitcoin, things like the Tor network, some people don't trust, things like, Skype or on a, iPhone FaceTime, or we can mock these things and say, look how they can be used to control us, but we also have to look at we always have to look at both sides. Where are the positives? The positives are people able to interact immediately across the world, face to face, multiple people. I'm able to broadcast across the world right now. This is really our revolutionary moment being sparked. And it's being sparked by technology that many people at the same time will mock. And believe me, I'm extremely skeptical of a lot of technology. Even Bitcoin to a point. But I understand what it has the potential of doing. I understand the potential of these new technologies, even the stuff that Google is working on. You being able to control your thermostat if I'm going to be out of town a little bit longer than I thought. There's no use keeping my temperature up. I just thought I was going to be out of town for a couple hours. I'm going to stay overnight. Might as well turn my temperature down. That way my heat's not on all the time. I can check if, I turn my oven off or my coffee maker, things like that. Are all my windows shut? Is my alarm system on? Or, I get an alert if motion detectors start going off. There's awesome potential, even though there is a risk. Us as a free people need to be able to understand that there's good things in this. Let's work to make it more private. Let's take this technology and come up with ways to improve on it by creating, competitive technology that maybe better encrypts everything. Therefore, unless they have that encryption key, they're not going to be able to know what the hell they're looking at. Encrypted networks, things that might not be able to be traced down to you, pinpointed to you. These are the advancements in a technological world that we need to seek out. Now, if you want to completely live off the grid, okay. And to a point, I wouldn't mind living off the grid to a point, but I'm also someone that has grown up with computers, has grown up with the ability to talk to people around the world. I've played video games with people on the opposite side of the world. It's amazing what technology has done for us. And it's also amazing how, because of the corporatism, something that Adam brought up, has made these extremely bloated entities that basically have a monopoly over something and cower to the government and concede to the government. And they're the ones like Google buying up the smaller companies, taking advantage of the technology, rolling out things that become intrusive when you understand that they do roll belly up to the government. And I believe they do it in an ideological way. I have one here from RT. Google announces it can now monitor your bills. Figuring out how broke you are about to become has never been easier. A new feature being rolled out by Google is letting mobile app users see when their bills are due and how much is owed with a single prompt. The search engine announced in a statement on Tuesday this week that a new feature in the Google app available for Android and iOS powered devices will let users quickly see if they have any bills coming up by simply saying a few words into their phone or tablet's microphone. When you can't remember when you've paid your bills, or you simply can't remember how much money you need to pay, you can now just ask Google, the company said. Tap the mic on the Google app and say, "Show me my bills," or "My bills due this week." If you have the payment due date and amount in your Gmail, you'll see a quick summary of upcoming and past bills. Pretty handy, huh? Google has already taken a tremendous amount of heat in recent years after implementing an automated system that scans the content of emails sent into its Gmail service in order to deliver customers more individualized services and advertisements. Although privacy advocates are likely to oppose the company's newest feature, the Wall Street Journal was quick to report that users who've downloaded the Google mobile app, formerly known as Google Search, must opt into the latest service. These features are available to users of Google Search app who have turned on the Google Now feature and given Google permission to access information from their Gmail accounts. Alistair Barr reported on Tuesday this week for the paper. Once the user does opt in, Barr added, Google lets them know on an individualized basis if certain content coming into their online accounts like Gmail message about a bill that soon be due is being fed into the mobile app. When the server shows a bill with the amount due for an airline reservation or anything else scrapped for the user's own Gmail account or scraped from the user's own Gmail account, at the top of a list search results, it says only you can see this result to let users know that the rest of the world cannot see how much they owe Comcast this month, the paper reported. Now we know that, what we don't know is how encrypted, how, what's behind this. And Google tends to fail to say that. Now, I would urge people to definitely check the terms of service when it comes to that, because they could say that, well, we gave the information to the electric company that you were notified that you had electric payment due. Like, they could get to this point. I don't know, but you'd have to check the terms of service if they're able to use that information. And a lot of times, a lot of these companies that offer types of services for free will do that. I think it's definitely something that should be looked into. Something else that should have been looked into a lot better, and no one seems to talk too much about anymore. This coming from CNSnews.com. Judicial Watch holder resigned over federal judge's Fast and Furious ruling. Judicial Watch President Tom Filton says he has no doubt that September 23rd federal court order requiring the Department of Justice to turn over an index of documents relating Fast and Furious scandal by October 22nd prompted the resignation of Attorney General Eric Holder 2 days later. There is no doubt the writing was on the wall between Fast and Furious and the IRS scandal circling around the Justice Department. He did not want to be a person of interest in Washington discussions. When more information about Fast and Furious came out, Filton told CNSnews.com, in the Washington way is that when bad things happen, get out of Dodge and hope everyone forgets. But Filton pointed out that the underlying issue exposed by what he called the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, insanely reckless gun tracking program that resulted in the 2010 death of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry and an estimated 300 Mexicans killed, make that unlikely. This is a battle that puts Holder in contempt of Congress, first time an attorney general's ever been put in contempt of Congress. Saw Nixonian assertion of executive privilege by Barack Obama and hapless Congress in the face of all this lawlessness, he told CNSnews.com. If you are a private citizen and you allowed a gun to go walk out of your home knowing with the plan that it be used with the idea and hope that it be used in a crime and show up at a crime scene, you'd be in jail. But in Washington, you get lauded as a civil rights hero as you retire. We know what really happened it's a question of who was involved specifically for the lies and exposing the lies. If the Justice Department under Eric Holder had been operating properly and there had been an independent criminal investigation going on, all this stuff would be grand jury material, he said, adding, I don't know how this Attorney General was able to remain in office. Filton says he also has no doubt that the released documents will provide a roadmap to the botched program. On September 23rd, U.S. District Judge John Bates ordered DOJ to provide Judicial Watch what is known as a bond index of Fast and Furious documents the group requested 2 years ago under the Freedom of Information Act, no later than October 22nd. It is time for this case to move forward, Bates wrote. A bond index must, 1, identify each document withheld, 2, state the statutory exemption claimed, and 3, explain how disclosure would damage the interests protected by the claimed exemption. Filton explained, you often get the subject of the email, most of the dates, and who they were sent to, who received them. We blew the lid off of the Black Panther scandal, not because of the documents they necessarily gave us, but because of the descriptions of the withholdings, he continued. And the bond index provided a roadmap into the decision-making process at the Justice Department, exposed the fact that they were lying when they said political people weren't involved. And this goes on, and you know, how many times do we see this, though? How many times do we see everything start coming to light, and all they do is resign? That's what the normal operation is, and it seems to even do that at the local level a lot of times, unless they're trying to make or trying to pretend that they're actually taking care of something. It's one of those things that, you know, whether it be IRS or the DOJ, it's basically no knowledge among most people that all these are corrupt. Yes, there's some people out there that really have that cognitive dissonance and really don't, they believe the fallacies. And I think that's because they're too afraid to face the facts. If they have to face the facts, they have to rethink everything they believe in. You know, that's something that I promote all the time, is rethinking what you believe. Always questioning what you believe and looking for evidence, for facts, for information, and seeing if you still come to the same conclusion. That's what, you know, spars the knowledge, is people wanting to know, wanting answers, and questioning those answers. Going, okay, this is my conclusion. Now can I disprove my conclusion? And if you say no, well, maybe you're coming to the right conclusion. If you say, well, my conclusion can be argued with other facts that, or at least what we know as facts, might point in a different direction. Well, I might come to this conclusion, but there's a chance that this conclusion could be wrong. And, you know, that's one thing a lot of preppers sometimes start realizing. Well, I might think the electrical grid's going to fall down, but, you know, talking to other preppers, and I kind of looked at where they're saying, I think an economic collapse might happen, or I think this might happen. You know, you might come to other conclusions and go, well, I'm not going to just prep for this situation. Some preppers might start out thinking, I'm just going to hoard everything at my house and that I'm going to bunker down, and then might rethink and go, well, maybe this isn't the safest place to bunker down. I kind of looked at a map and I might be right in the crosshairs of all these problems. I might need to bug out. Maybe I should start prepping to bug out too. Always have multiple options. Multiple options when it comes to prepping. Multiple options when it comes to investing in your future. Multiple options when it comes to technology you use. You have to be diverse in your life to really be able to understand the diversity of the world. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of people don't like change. They don't like to explore. And I'm not saying you have to go out there and just explore everything, but at least be open-minded to different viewpoints and different ideas. But you don't have to be submissive. I think that's the key point. A lot of people think that if you're open to the idea of other things, you believe in diversity, that somehow you're then submissive to that diversity. And you don't have to be. That's a personal choice to be submissive to something. And there's times that being submissive might be the best thing for your future. You might be in a situation where if you aren't submissive, that could be the end of you, your life. Your future, your family. And there's going to be times where maybe that is true, but the other options aren't really any better. And you become that moment in time where even though you know maybe that could end your life, you can't submit to it. Maybe the morals are much stronger than the ability to be slowly killed instead of quickly killed, and a chance to stand up and stand your ground high. You know, this is philosophy when you start looking into this. And again, it becomes, questioning what you believe. And I think that that's something that many of us do a lot of the times. I definitely do. I always try to look into my ideology, my beliefs. And, there's been times that I've not been sure about something until I found someone that better explained it, or read something that better explained it. Because vague explanations on something sometimes don't do it for many people. They don't grab a concept, and that happens for me too. That's why we definitely need to work harder to spread liberty, to explain liberty to people that never understood the concept of liberty or freedom. And maybe we'll do a special on this broadcast sometime soon, getting down into some deeper issues. Stay tuned here on UCY.TV for the Continual Condition Live coming up next. Thank you for tuning in. Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. I'll see you Friday. Take care.
I waste my time.